You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Line's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is episode 13, Calling in Help. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
With that, Colin and I stormed out. Once safely inside a travel tram, I spoke into my metal. "How much of that did you catch, Graham?" "All of it. Beware of the potatoes and corn. Changing your ID. In the stead, use cover ID. Orders must now be in triplicate. 2 stars minimum. Translation: beware of the eyes that might be watching and the ears that might be listening." He was changing my authorization codes. "Instead, use my backup codes. All orders must be given by 3 2-star generals." "Graham," I returned, stepping off the travel tram and heading toward my quarters, en route to Igloo to scan the society page, particularly Elvis. Peacock out. Translation: I was en route to my quarters to scan the overseer, particularly Nate. I pressed my thumb to the verification pad next to the doors to my quarters. A few seconds later, the doors flew open. I raked the room with my eyes. A sense of fear came over me. I felt as if someone had taken their giant hand and crushed my entire body as the hand made a fist. I walked into what looked like a war zone. The coffee and dining room tables had been dumped onto the floor. The books and contents of the bookcases scattered on the carpet. Stuffing stuck out from holes in the couch and chairs. "Lancelot, get a team in here to deal with this," I whispered, putting my arm in front of Colin to stop him from entering. "Let me go in first, Lancelot." I retrieved my 9mm from my holster. Holding it at my side, I crept into our quarters, searching every nook and cranny of every room for signs that the intruder was still inside. Moving back into the living room, I waved Colin in and concluded, "The coast is clear." "The overseer," Colin cried, glancing around the room, "it's gone." Reaching into the pocket of my coveralls, I retrieved the long, rectangular device. "I can't just leave it lying around," I noted, glancing at Colin. With it in hand, I maneuvered through the war zone, stepping over books, moving around the upturned tables and hole-filled chairs. We finally made it across the room to the far wall of what used to be our once serene dining area. It might fall into the wrong hands. I sat on the floor. I activated the overseer, waiting for the screen to lift. Then I programmed the overseer to view Acacia Solomos holding cell starting from 0920 hours to the present time. Acacia Solomos appeared on the screen. She sat on the edge of her bunk, watching the doors of her cell. Every few seconds, her eyes flew up one end of the hallway in front of the cell to the other. I further instructed the overseer to follow the woman in quadrant 2 of the frame. She is obviously waiting for someone. She knows someone is coming to release her. Colin echoed my thoughts, taking a seat on the floor about a foot away from me, for minutes before the order to release had been made. I fast-forwarded the overseer until I noticed the same blonde security officer we'd talked to earlier move in front of Acacia Solomos' cell. A woman with dark skin and her red hair pulled back in a French braid right behind him. I studied her a moment before realizing who she was, Elizabeth Meadows. She looked as if she had sat out in the sun too long. The officer unlocked the cell doors, swinging it open. He stepped aside for her to leave. "After you complete the paperwork, ma'am, you will be free to go," the officer advised her. She stood up and strolled over to the entrance, walking through the open doors as if she had been there by mistake and that mistake had now been rectified. She followed Elizabeth Meadows and the officer into the security office, where she completed the appropriate formalities. Elizabeth Meadows ushered her out of the security office. Halfway down the hall, Acacia Solomos fell into step with Elizabeth Meadows, demanding, "What took you so long? Do you know how hard it is to get Colonel Masters and Lieutenant Colonel Masters' voice prints and authorization codes?" Elizabeth Meadows retorted in a hushed tone, hands on her hips. Her lips turned downward. "That computer is one smart cookie," Elizabeth added, "so I had to give it a distraction." Distraction? What kind of distraction? I wondered aloud. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed security guards walking into our quarters. On the screen, I saw them continue down the hallway. Acacia remarked, "But the money we will get from destroying them will make up for any trouble you had to endure." My heart pounded. By them, did she mean me and my family? Acacia boarded the travel tram at the end of the corridor, waving goodbye to Elizabeth Meadows, who turned the corner. Acacia pressed the C button, then the 3, indicating that she was headed toward the Charlie level, the third corridor. I glanced at the time index. 0950 hours. Nate was supposed to meet me at Acacia Solomos holding cell at 1000 hours. She exited the travel tram, hurrying down the corridor. When she turned the corner, my heart pounded even more wildly when I spotted a dark-haired man in black coveralls walking a few feet in front of her. Nate. He was probably on his way to meet me. She bent over, lifting up her skirt. From her gun holster, she retrieved a 9mm. How did she get the gun past security and into the holding cell? Maybe she didn't. Maybe somewhere along the way, Elizabeth Meadows slipped it to her. But where? We watched the entire process from the time Acacia was released until now. In any case, when this vendetta was over, there were going to be stricter security procedures in the security department of the Liberty. Nate and I had to sit down with Colin and discuss how to heighten its safety. She pressed her gun to her side, quickening her pace. When she gained on him, she raised her gun above her head and smashed it across the back of his head. Nate fell into a limp puddle on the floor. She walked around him, grabbing his feet. She dragged him across the ground into a nearby travel tram. Inside the travel tram, she walked over to Nate, who remained unconscious, and removed his handcuffs. Wrapping one end of the handcuffs to the railing of the travel tram, she slapped the other cuff around Nate's wrist. She then marched out of the travel tram. She turned around, gazing at it a moment. Pulling a small device from her pocket, she pointed it at the travel tram and pressed a button. The button lit up, flashing. Colin and I shared a troubled look. "She's activated a bomb," I told him in a strained voice. Fear rose up on the inside of me, threatening to take over, but I couldn't let it. I had a job to do. I had to save my husband. She then instructed the computer, "Chip, close off travel tram Charlie Fowler Green." Within seconds, a barred gate came down over the travel tram doors. I turned off the overseer, taking a deep breath. I peered at Colin, who wore a "I'm not sure what I got myself into" look. I wore that look many times when I first started out. I remembered how terrified I was at my first bomb scare, and even now, I caught my hands shaking. Now more so because it was my husband, my partner, my best friend in that travel tram. Suddenly, my job hit home once again. The reality that I could lose Nate, that my baby could have to grow up without her father, just like Reggie and Remy, gripped my heart. "Okay, Lancelot, do you have any officers trained in explosives?" I whispered to Colin. Watching him nod, I continued, "Have them meet us at travel tram Charlie Fowler Green immediately." As if on cue, my commlet chimed. Over my commlet, I heard, "Colonel Masters, this is Major Ryan. We are experiencing a problem with the computer." I could hear the tension in her southern drawl. I touched my thumb to the middle of the commlet and required, "What type of problem, Major?" We are essentially locked out. None of the department heads can access the computer. Are you able to fix the problem? That must be the distraction that Elizabeth Meadows was talking about. It appears to be a computer virus. It is eating through the safeguards, and I am afraid that if we don't solve the problem quickly, it could wipe the entire memory of the computer clean. Continue to work on the problem. Employ as many people as you need to help you, but I want to go to an Alpha 1 alert. From now on, only follow orders in person. Not over a commlet, the computer, through notes. Do you understand? That sounds like a wise decision. Someone could take advantage of the situation, came her response. I'll keep you updated on my progress. With that, she ended the transmission. I turned on my heel, stuffing the overseer back into my pocket. Let's go, Lancelot. Colin and I marched toward travel tram Charlie Fowler Green. My eyes focused on the entrance. I wonder if Nate had awakened yet. Panther, I required, speaking into my metal, is there a way to activate the device in Nate's metal, so we could talk with him? Never taking my eyes off the travel tram doors. I'm working on it, Peacock, came the general's response. 2 uniformed officers fell into step with us. We strode along in silence. I noticed the crowd of uniformed guards convening around the entry to the travel tram. How many officers did Colin call? I stepped up the pace and moved through the crowd, facing them. Lieutenant Colonel Masters is trapped in this travel tram, I advised them. One of the guards in the back raised his hand. I pointed to him. Yeah, hi, I'm Lieutenant Walters. How long do we have before it blows? I cringed. I didn't want to think about it blowing, but I answered, I am meeting with the perpetrator tomorrow at 1500 hours, so we have until then to defuse this bomb. We can't just unload the travel tram, another officer piped up. No, because the perpetrator has shut off access to the entrance. We have to operate under the assumption that she has wired the elevator and hatch to trigger the bomb, I explained, gesturing to the barred gate. I expounded, she doesn't want us to get to Lieutenant Colonel Masters until 1500 hours. At which time, she either wants to take another hostage or murder someone. We have to find another way to access the travel tram, Colin concluded, standing slightly off to the side, hands stuffed deep into his pockets. Right now, a computer virus has temporarily suspended our access to the computer, I revealed, scanning the uniformed officers, so we are going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. Which is, Walters intervened. First, we are going to get a blueprint of this star vessel. Engineering would have the most current version, I provided. Then I motioned to Walters and asked, would you go to engineering and get that for us, Walters? Before he could answer, I turned around and looked at the barred gate again. I rubbed my chin. I could get through the bars, but if the doors were rigged, we would all blow to smithereens. Spinning back around, I instructed, I want you 6, pointing to the 6 officers in the back, to evacuate this level and the level above and below this one. The 6 complied with my order, rushing past the rest of the crowd toward the heavily occupied areas first. Peacock, this is Jaguar, I heard Nate call over the communication device behind my metal. His voice sounded tired and weak. My heart pounded at the very sound of his voice. He was alive. Not that I doubted that he would be. But I knew the worst wasn't over. What if we couldn't get to the bomb in time to save him? I dismissed the thought and focused on the moment. He continued, I am trapped in a travel tram, Charlie Fowler Green. We are on the other side of the doors, I whispered into my metal, walking away from the crowd. Listen, I believe she has rigged the doors to an explosive device, and the computer has a virus that is interfering with access. It may take a while, but we will get you out. I guess I am stuck here for the duration, came Nate's response. We are working on that, I assured him, picturing how surprised and elated he would be when I told him that although we lost one daughter, we were having another child. I smiled. Jag, I have something to tell you. As if ignoring my last statement, he bombarded me with questions. We? What do you mean, we? Who's helping you? Did Graham send a team? Are you using the security officers? Peacock, answer me. Someone rapped on my shoulder. I turned around to see Walter standing there. He shoved the blueprints in my chest. Thanks, I mouthed. I leaned against the wall, sliding down it. I sat on the floor, rolling out the blueprints. I smoothed them across the ground. Spotting Colin in the crowd, I motioned him over. I covered my medal with my hand. Lancelot, have them secure this entire level. Don't let anyone in or out without permission. Colin hurried off to discuss matters with several uniformed officers. In his absence, I studied the blueprint. Peacock, who were you talking to? Nate persisted,